All right, so hello to everyone that is out there that is live with us right now. Welcome to our newest edition of Chopping with the Stars. And I'm making sure it's actually gone up live. Okay, hang on. We have a technical difficulty apparently. Let me try this again. Oh, it says we're live. All right. So we are on for this week's edition with Veronica Wicks, who many of you out there probably know from her work for the last several years with the Blue Knights and also with Broken City and also with Vista Murrieta High School out in California. So she's a phenomenal talent. We were lucky enough to have her here this fall to do our fall day of percussion and to work with the drumline and stuff, and they had a great time working with her. So I'm going to hand it over to Veronica and get out of the way and let her take it away.
Hi guys, I am Veronica. Like Tracy said, I have been working with, I formerly worked at the Blue Knights as the percussion caption head for the previous 6 years from 2014 to 2019. And I currently work with Broken City Percussion and a couple of local high schools in California. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Can you guys all hear me? Give me a thumbs up. I'm good. Okay, good. Just checking. So yeah, I work in that realm, that style. I work with Mike Jackson, Roger Carter, Taha, all these people that you're seeing throughout these couple of clinics. I've seen Taha on here, and I've watched all of them. I've tried to trying to follow along with each one to see what you guys have been learning, maybe what I could add that might be different than something you've already previously learned. But if you have any questions or there's something that you want to learn that's maybe within this style or something that I'm talking about, feel free to ask at any time. Hoping it could be more conversational than just one-sided, because this whole like Zoom life thing we're living in, it's so weird, and sometimes it can be really one-sided, like I'm just talking to a computer screen all day. So I might ask questions to you and then you can answer back. I might just pick on people now that I could see all your names, so that's cool. So hopefully you're all alert and no one's like sleeping over here. But yeah, so I saw what everyone did, and you've had such a range of like different stuff. It's super cool, actually. A cool thing that Dr. Wiggins is doing, putting together like such a range of instructors. Today I'm going to talk about my specific way of expressing percussion and how I play, and how some of my groups play. It might be a little bit different from some of the things you previously learned, but just take it for what it is, learn what you can from it, try to apply whatever styles to that. And also, as Dr. Wiggins said, I was there in October, so maybe some of you were there. Was anybody there when I was there? Okay, cool. Four people? Okay, almost all of you. Okay, that's cool. Hi again. It felt like I was just there. It's kind of weird that I'm doing this like this now, but anyhow. So today I want to talk about, I come from the like idea where like exercises are more like an excerpt and they're more like a piece of music, especially with my experience working with Mike Jackson. He writes a lot of exercises that are very relevant to the music and how we would play the music. So I don't want to go through every exercise because I feel like they're all over YouTube and those kids are playing them way better than me, and they're all free. You could find that material if you want it. But I want to go over like concepts that you can apply to exercises and concepts you can apply just to practice at home. So it might not be an actual exercise per se, but just things you can practice at home. And I heard many instructors mention this book that I want to start with. No one busted it out, but I'm going to bust it out. It's called State Control by George Lawrence Stone. Such a good book. I didn't share the first page. I wanted to share the first page, but I couldn't find it. I should have just shared a screenshot, but you should just buy it, support the artist, support the family. It's a great book. I use this book all the time. I talk about it all the time. All my students know. They're probably over it, but the Blue Knights kids specifically know. We'll be in the summer without the book, and I'll just be like screaming out random stickings, and we're all learning it together. So the reason I like the book, something Glenn said too in his session was, you don't have to know how to read per se, it's just sticking. So if you know how to read right, left, you don't really have to know how to read rhythms. So it's an easy way to start. Like if you're a teacher and you want to teach your students something really basic and really easy, and we want to talk about like very introduction concepts of drumming, it's the first page is a good place to start because you could just talk about rebound. So with that, I want to do some of the first patterns, but we're thinking about like, as far as like how I'm talking about playing, I'm thinking about it from the framework of expression. Like everything is about expression. Like what do you want it to sound like? What type of, like, how are you trying to express yourself through the way you're playing? So sometimes that changes my technique. I'm not always playing one particular way. And if you see some of my groups, you might see like the style like being a little bit prominent, and it's just for expression. It's like sometimes we want to play stuff really, really soft, and then sometimes we want to play it really, really loud. So however, depending on how we want to play it is how our technique is going to change and sort of evolve depending on what we're playing. So I'm going to start real basic with just the first pattern of the Stick Control book, because I've noticed on all the sessions, everyone starts with eights, right? So all the people on this call, I bet you know how to like make an exercise packet, because you've all learned like the basic foundation of like start with eights, accent tap, get some double beat, leads you to rolls. Like you kind of know that foundation, I'm sure. I could tell you're all drumming on pads, and I could tell that we're like at an advanced level. So I don't have to be like that, break it down with eights. But I want to start with these patterns, which are similar to eights, and talk about using like full range of motion. So we're going to be using like, I call them 3 mechanisms: forearm, wrist, and finger, which everybody kind of uses those same 3. Everyone just uses them at different degrees. So mine are going to change depending on what I'm playing. Right now, just like be big and full and loose. Even if it's messy, rather be messy and then tame it down than be super mechanical and take away from the expression, because the whole goal is to express this even, beautiful, warm sound. So we're all doing just full stroke, rebound stroke, 16th notes. So I'm going to put the med on. Hopefully you could hear. We hear that? Yeah? I put it like as loud as it goes. So the reason I bring up the book is because I saw a lot of instructors mentioned it, and a lot of people use this stick control exercise, that awesome one that Glenn shares. That exercise is super cool. But the reason I use the book is because everyone mentions it, but no, like maybe you don't know how to use it. Maybe it's just like a tool, but you're not sure how to use it. So definitely, like, if you look at the first page, like, do not read it down and play it down. That's not the point of each pattern. Like, you might not be able to see that, but each pattern is listed by number. For sure, don't just go like straight down and play them all together. Just pick one pattern and play it over and over and over so you can get the quality that you're looking for. Okay, so let's do pattern 1. We're just gonna play 4 bars of 16ths, all forte, big and loose, super legato. Here we go, we'll go 8 from the mid. 5, 6, 7. Let's do it again. Good. And 5, 6, 7. Okay, now let's do it off the left hand. So 1, 2, off the left hand. 1, 2. Last time. 2. And 1, 2. like basic. Everyone knows how to do that, right? That's like a version, the same type of stroke that you would play if you were playing with eights. So I know in the last session, I was listening, they were talking about wrist versus arm, and how like back in the day, a lot of groups would just play with like a lot of wrist and not really like implement the arm. I'm definitely about like utilizing the arm when it's necessary. So in this case, I'm playing kind of big, playing kind of loose. I'm definitely using a little bit of weight from the arm. I'm trying not to let it be so wristy because I'm trying to get a bigger sound. So if I use mostly wrist, I'm getting a little bit thinner sound. And I'm positive that people can use mostly wrist and get a more dense sound than I can. I personally am just thinking everything should be loose and legato and as natural as possible. So you're going for like full flow and everything being relaxed, but you're still in control, right? I'm not going like so crazy that I'm using all arm or so crazy that I'm using just wrist. Like, I'm just finding the balance and the blend between all of them. So the way I would really do this, I'm doing it in 16 counts here because I don't want you to just watch me play 16ths forever. But the way I would really do it is like put on a song and just play it to a song the whole time just to get my hands warm, whatever the tempo of the song is. Instead of like being analytical and punching in a tempo, I would just like, oh, let's just play to get my hands moving and get my hands warm versus just doing an 8 on a hand. So that's one way to do it. So all the stickings go off the right hand and then they go off the left hand. So let's do pattern 3 because we already did the first 2. It's just double strokes. Right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. So we'll do that for 16 counts. Everything's going to be like full stroke, rebound, coming up off the head. I think most of you too also were learning about the different stroke types. Like I've heard them be already talked about. Like full, down, tap, up, right? So right now we're just focusing on that rebound stroke. It's definitely the most feel-good stroke to me. I think when you're teaching students, it's the one that like a good one to start with because it feels good and you're just trying to get everything back up off the head, utilizing all the rebound. So I call it a full stroke. Some people call it rebound. It doesn't matter as long as the stick is coming back up off the head. And you're getting that full big range of motion. So every single note is coming up off the head. Right? I'm not doing, which would be like almost a downstroke equivalent. So we're trying to get that flow, get the movement going from right to left. So try that. 16 counts up the right. And 5, 6, 7. Try it again. Do the same thing. 5, 6, 7. And now let's try it. I'm going to try it off the left hand, which would be pattern 4. So same thing, same motion. Now you're just trying to channel your brain on left hand energy. Let's try it. 1, 2, 1, 2. One more time. Good. Big full stroke. 1, 2. Last time. Exactly. So if you're like a more advanced player, maybe going a little faster would work for you. If you're not and you're still trying to figure out rebound and try to figure out how to get the stick to bounce back up, I would take it slow and like zoom out and make sure both notes are coming back up off the head. But that's like a very basic thing to do. So what I like to do with like more advanced students is mess with it a little bit. So let's do paradiddles. We'll start all up and then we'll mess with it a little bit. So all forte, 16 counts, paradiddle sticking. So I'm not putting any accent. I'm going for equal sounds, just even paradiddle sticking. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's do it one more time. 2, 1, 2. so most of us kind of already know these stickings. We're kind of familiar with them. So the way I would implement it to work on, make sure you're working on rebound, I'll start adding like 2 heights just to see, sort of mess with it, find the groove, find the expression in it. So if I put my left hand at piano and my right hand at forte, play the same thing. Everything's still a full stroke. Even my low little piano hand, everything's a full stroke coming up off the hip. So let's go. Right hand accent, left hand piano. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready. Yes, some of us have probably done that one. Let's switch it. So it's still off the right hand. We're just going to accent the left hand now. So right hand's at piano, left hand is at accent. They're starting on a piano now. 1, 2, 1, 2. So you notice when I do them, now it's really exposed if I'm doing a full stroke. So if you're a teacher maybe and you're teaching a younger student, you'll notice when we start adding 2 heights, things go away. Like full strokes go away, the touch starts getting harder, it starts getting real weird. So the goal is to like keep the touch relaxed and still maintain the full stroke. You can really see it when it's 2 heights like this. You can see my left hand like bounce back up on that 1 stroke, on the isolated stroke, and same for the double. So now, as the book keeps going, those are the easy ones. The patterns get way more complex as you keep going through. We'll do 3 more of the like basic ones, but then when you're on your own, you can explore some of the harder ones and mess with them. But the next one is pattern 6 in the book, and it's an inverted paradiddle. So instead of putting the diddle on the outside, you just put it right in the middle. So now, instead of going paradiddle, I'm just going paradiddle. I wouldn't ever count it that way, but right, left, right, and then left, right, left. So I just put 2. That's what it is. So let's try playing 16 of them, 16 of those. Everything's a full stroke. So as the stickings change, don't change your like approach. You still want the stick to bounce up off the head. And I'm not being super specific with like where your fingers are and how much arm you're using and percentages or nothing like that. I'm being really open and flowy and just letting you like discover how to bounce the stick up for yourself. So try the inverted paradiddle. 1, 2, 1, 2. Try it again. 1, 2, ready. Yeah, so you want to make sure that the diddle is sandwiched right in between those 2 single notes, right? That's the only difference from the regular paradiddle. Everything else is the same, stroke is the same, foundation is the same. So now let's mix it up. Let's go right hand forte, left hand piano. So we're getting, that's 2 of them. And then you notice as you start doing 2 heights, we start doing weird things, or like we'll listen to the groove and it throws us off. So do your best to just stay constant. Let's try it right hand up. 1, 2, 1, 2. Try it again. 2 and 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, everyone kind of got it. Now let's switch it to left hand up. So we're getting the diddle is the first accent, right? That's, you're like doing a puttada with the left hand up, right? And then it continues. So let's try left hand up, right hand piano. 1, 2, 1, 2. Try it again. 1, 2. like I said, as you keep going, they get a little bit more complex. They get a little weird. And then your brain starts tripping out on like the groove and stuff. So the next one, it's just a backwards paradiddle. So we put the diddle first. So now we're going diddle, para, diddle, para. So if the diddle's just on the downbeat. So I could accent it to show you like this. That's right now we're gonna play it all up, but that's where the diddle is. You just feel it right on the downbeat. So let's try that all up. 1, 2, 1, 2. Do big diddle on the first count. 1, 2. The right hand. Yeah, accent the right hand. So 1, 2, left hand at piano. 1, 2. Let's try it again. 1, 2. Here we go. Now try accenting left hand, right hand piano. 1, 2, 1, 2. Two, again, last time. Yeah, so it does get weird when you start messing with the heights, but it is a good way just to like check your rebound and make sure that the stick's coming back up the whole time and that you're not creating any weird like anomaly in your hand just because we added an accent or we're playing a tap. They're both full strokes, it's just on different scales, right? One full stroke is all the way up here and the other one's down here. So I'm still bouncing. If I'm playing it all piano, I'm still bouncing and getting the head off, like the stick back up off the head. So that's a goal when you're doing it with the 2 height. I just wrote your like next cadence. Like that's how easy it is. You could just play one hand up and one hand low and it makes a groove on its own. But it sort of confuses you because you're like, what's happening? You start listening to the groove and you lose track of like the stickings and the stroke maybe. So it's a good like test of like being relaxed and being completely aware of what your hands are doing and the stroke type that you're playing. So that's how I do that one. It gets into like crazy fun stuff. Like if you keep going through the book, there's like, it'll go from like 8 tones to triplets, like, and then it will change the sticking of like the 8 notes and make them maybe diddles, or it'll change the sticking of the triplet, all kinds of things. Basically, he takes one pattern of rhythms or sticking and then basically keeps changing the sticking into all these derivatives. So it really tests your like touch and your technique and your style and how you're playing, which is the bigger thing I think I get out of it is touch. If I'm tight, I can really hear that I'm tight. When I start adding accents or doing different things, I can feel it, I can hear it. Particularly my left hand is always the one that sounds harder. So the goal is you're trying to hear like even sound, and especially like if you have a good pair of sticks on a pad, you're trying to get the stick to resonate as well. So yeah, it could be boring if you do it boring, but it could also be really fun if you mix it up and you mess with the patterns. I'm a tenor player, so like especially like at Broken City, we'll like mess with tenor rounds or put one hand on a different drum. We'll just do all kinds of things just to sort of mess around with different variations of it while still maintaining good sounds and good stroke type. So that's just one variation. Any questions on that one?
We haven't had any pop up yet. I think if there's a recurring theme that everybody ought to get out of this at this point, though, it's learn stick control, because that's been in every one of these sessions.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. I don't even want to go. Well, the next one, it's okay. The diddle's on the so it's like an invert. Like if you're playing, but it's all up. But after that, it just goes into the the exercise everybody knows. It goes into these. And which everybody already knows, so I'm not even going to go into that. So yeah, all that being said, I've been messing around with like different versions of 8 on a Hand. I think when I worked at Blue Knights, we messed around with so many things. We tried doing like Flam Jam. We would start the lot with Flam Jam. And then everybody's playing a different version of 16ths with the Mets constant. And then we started warming up with like buzzes and stuff like that. So I think we're talking about getting our hands warm. When Dr. Wiggins first asked me to do this, I was like, chopping, like I don't have chops, so I'm just going to talk about like how to warm up, how to make your hands feel good, because I still don't have chops today. So I noticed that all the other instructors mostly talked about like a warm-up routine and how to get your hands to feel good. So I'm going to go back and forth between like warming up and then also warming down. Like if you played something really choppy and you're trying to get your hands to like chill after, the stick control book is also beneficial for that too. Like I've done chop out sessions and then just done a couple patterns to a song to get my hands to loosen up and relax. So there's that whole side. But as far as like warming up and starting with like a version of 8s or something like that to get your hands going, I've been really into like combining various technique styles into one exercise. So the version of 8s that we're going to go over, it's a version where we can talk about using forearm, and we can also talk about using like the twitch muscle and like using wrist to be super relaxed. So it's going from 8th notes to triplets, so we can sort of use both of those skill sets. So if we're playing really slow 8th notes, let's see, I'm going to put the Met at like, yeah. So the Mets at 118. But if we're playing slow 8th notes, I like to think about using a little bit more weight. We're going to play a slower tempo and piano. So everything's kind of down here. And I'm thinking about using a little bit more weight just because the tempo. So sometimes technique is relative to tempo. And that's why I said I'm trying not to get really like sciencey or mathematical with it. I'm definitely about like flow and being relaxed as possible, and then adjusting your technique depending on what you're playing. So right now we're playing 8th notes that are slower. Now if I were playing them faster, like here, I would probably use smaller muscles and use a little bit more wrist. But I'm playing slow right now, so I'm going to use a little bit more forearm, like if I'm at 118. So the way the exercise works is you're playing 8/16, just the stock one, everybody knows already, all at piano, but we're just going to think about using a little bit more weight from the forearm. So we're starting with a little bit of, like if I'm on drum set and I'm playing on a hi-hat, Mike Jackson always uses this analogy. Instead of like playing it with all wrists, you're playing with a little bit more weight, just so you can create that like consistent slow tempo. So yeah, think about that when you're playing 8/16 at piano. So it goes into that, and then it goes into piano triplets, 8/16, or you could say 12/12/24, I guess, right? If we're actually counting the partials. Which at this tempo are like more wrist turn. So if I go 8th note, I'm a little bit more forearm. And then if I go triplet, I'm a little bit more wrist. So I'm trying to go back and forth between both of those ideas. So I'm going to do 8/16 all piano with forearm. And then we're going to go straight into triplets, 12/12/24, right, left, right, left. And then stop. Everything's at piano, but explore using those different mechanisms, like getting the same sound, and maybe you have to use a little bit more arm for some, maybe you have to use a little more finger, maybe you have a lot of wrist chops. Either way, just try exploring. Let's try it. 8 from the Met, we're doing 8 notes and then triplets. 1, 2, So very basic concepts, right? Rhythmically, everyone knows eighth notes and triplets, but it's more about like how you're playing it and how you're trying to create those sounds. So like if I took the sixth out of my hand and I just play with my hands, if I play those eighth notes like all wrist, like this, it's very hard to hear me. But if I play with a little bit more forearm, I'm getting a little bit more sound, a little bit more weight. Now that's just my interpretation. There are people that would play it with a little bit more wrist. I'm playing it really heavy at this slow tempo. Now, if it were faster, I would relax the arm a little bit, right? But for the purposes of this tempo, I'm adding a little bit more arm. So I put those two together in that version of eights, so you can go back and forth between the two. And then the next part, we're literally like combining the two. So it's a bar of triplets, and then we're adding the left hand on the eighth note. So we're going... So we're playing that 3/2 little hemiola, right? I'm playing slam, right, left, right? Playing 4 counts of that. But the thing about it is my right hand is just staying constant the whole time. And my right hand is doing this twitch technique while my left hand is finally transitioning into like big, forte, 8-arm hand. So it's kind of like the stick control thing where you're trying to do 2 things simultaneously and you're still trying to get good quality, good technique throughout the whole thing. So my right hand's staying relaxed. As soon as you tense up your right hand, it doesn't sound like the correct rhythm, and the stick doesn't really breathe, right? We're trying to let the stick breathe back here. I did hear, I think Derek talked about the egg analogy. I've heard that one. I've heard a lot of different metaphors. Here's one way to think about it. You just put the stick upside down in your hand, like everybody put the stick upside down, like your right hand. And I would never just like open up so much like this where the stick's gonna fall out. And I also don't squeeze it. I just naturally hold the stick upside down. There's like this little pocket and it moves a little bit. And then when I flip it over, it's pretty much the same. There's that wiggle room in the back. So when I'm doing like a twitch from the side, that wiggle room is open for sure. I'm not like this. It's gonna be really hard to play it like that. So I'm letting that little space back there be open and relaxed. And I just think about it like this. That's natural. The way you would hold your phone, the way you would hold anything. You don't normally grab it and squeeze, and you don't normally grab it and just like drop it. So that same little space back there, kind of apparent when I play the triplet. So as soon as you squeeze, you really know. So try playing those 2 parts. We have 4 counts of triplets, and then 4 counts of triplets with the 8th note on the left hand. Let's try that. 1, 2, 1, 2. Ready, 2, 2, ready, and then basically I just add a left hand forte 8th notes to put me on the left hand. So and then I end at piano because we're going to do that whole 3-bar phrase off the left. So now play 3 bars, add that. And then you're kind of really exploring like how different that is, like one hand doing relaxed twitch and one hand doing this big legato rebound thing. So try that, 3 bars. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, let's try it again. 1, 2. So then I do that same exact cycle on my left hand, which is, it gets fun because now your left hand has to do the twitch, right? Your left hand is doing this. And most people are not left-handed, most people are right-handed. So it is a little challenging to get that to stay relaxed when you add this. Most people tense up the left, so you get this, which is another way of exposing that relaxed, flowy vibe. So the whole goal is like be as relaxed as possible. So when you put both hands together, you don't want either hand to be tense. So let's try it off the left hand. Try to keep those triplets relaxed. Here we go. 1, 2. And it ends up piano. Try it again. together. 6 bars together. 1, 2. Yeah. So I don't know where this idea came from one day, but I was really into the idea that like some of the things that get your hands warm are obviously 8 on a hand. Everybody loves a big rebound stroke, but then also something like tap pyramid, which I think Taha and Glenn probably talked about, where you're doing this twitch. It's one of like everybody's favorite ways of warming up is using tap pyramid and getting that small muscle to like really warm up and feel good. So I kind of wanted to blend both ideas into one exercise so you can feel the transition between the two. So with all that said, we're doing 4 counts off the right, 4 counts off the left. Then do 2 counts off both hands. So yeah, you can hear my gaps because my left hand is tight because I'm old. But try it with me. 2 counts of each. 1, 2. Yeah. This time it just ends at forte because we're gonna go into accent tap, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, this is all like really isolation. Like we're working things in isolation and then now combining them so we can do them simultaneously. Because a lot of us are solid at going like this, just one full stroke or doing just the taps. But then when we put them together, it really exposes like where your hands are at and how relaxed you are and your touch. I'm playing on a softer pad. My other pad is really loud. I didn't want to use it because I didn't want it to sound weird on this. But if you're playing on like some of those louder pads, you can really hear like tone and touch, or when you get harsh on the stick or on the head, especially on a drum too. So when you do that 3/2, it's really apparent when the low hand is tight. So something to think about and be relaxed on. Let's try the whole thing. So you have piano 8/8/16, and then piano 12/12/24, and then the combination with the hemiola. Let's try that. Here we go. 1, 2. So I'm a little weighted. I'm using a little bit of arm. So there's a spin on 8 on a hand. Not something I would do with like a basic like A class line or like my junior high, but I do it with my Scholastic World group. You can see their name on the PDF I sent you because I didn't have time to take it off. But I've experimented it more with like a world class setting, more like your guys' age, like college age students, where you've already kind of developed the skill. But if you haven't or you're struggling with it, I recommend just doing the isolated version where you're just practicing like twitch for a second. And you're really trying to get your rebound happening on the low end and that fast wrist muscle. Like you should be able to do it without the stick. Like just doing this should feel good. If this feels like a struggle, it's gonna feel like a struggle when you put the stick in your hand. So that's something you want to check out. Like just being able to do this little twitch motion. And this is a way to use all the mechanisms. Like I have to use arm to get those piano notes out. I mean, I don't have to. For the sound that I want, I am. And then I have to use wrist to get the twitch. And then my fingers have to be relaxed so that way I'm not choking off on those triplets. So I'm kind of implementing everything in there and trying to utilize all the muscle groupings together. I should say mechanism because they're not muscles. Like your wrist is not a muscle. But anyhow, the next part goes into like a 2 height. Everyone also, like I said, all the other instructors went through kind of like an 8s and a version of accent tap. There's so many variations on accent tap, and there's so many good basic ways to build that skill. But the premise behind accent tap and all those exercises, we're not working on like exercises, we're working on downstrokes. And we're just using those exercises to work on the down, right? We're trying to get the stick to not rebound back up to here, but rebound back up to like here on a tiny low scale, right? And getting the stick to freeze down a little bit. This is a make or break skill, like in drum corps auditions. I always see it like downstrokes not being very strong, so people get that high tap, and it changes a lot of things that you're going to play, because you're going to play paradiddles and flam accents and all this crazy vocabulary. And if you can't get the stick to stop all the way down, it's gonna be a challenge. So practicing something as simple as just regular accent tap is a great place to just start. So the way I have it in here is very basic. It's just literally accent tap for each downbeat. And then my right hand continues to play like 16 counts, right? If we're playing 8/8/16 accent tap, I add the triplet on my left. So except the last 2 counts to put me on the left hand. So right. So 7, 8, left hand. And then I do the same thing off the left. So it's accent tap, hemiola, and then 7, 8. So now I'm doing this hemiola thing with the accent tap, and I'm still trying to get that same exact stroke type. This is where I see what I was talking about, the poor downstroke. It turns into this. Because everybody's tight. So if you stay relaxed, you can still get this vibe. It should never change. I should still be constant freeze down the whole time, even when I add that little triplet. So mess around with it. That's one way to do it. We'll try it. We'll just read it down, and then if you're struggling with it, you could do it on your own later. So do right hand, left hand, long right with the hemiola, and then left hand, right hand, long left with the hemiola, and stop with the 2 height. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, this one's hard off the right, because this is tight, at least for me. And then when my hands are messed up, my rhythm gets all slurred and nasty. I'm not getting perfect tap to get up, tap to get up, tap to get up. So don't like slow down my video and like rewatch my rhythms. They might not be perfect, but you're going for that like tap drag sound, tap to get up, tap to get up, tap to get up. That's the rhythm. I learned that as Chim Chimney from Mary Poppins, or you could use the Christmas song, Carol of the Bells. Like people learn hemiolas, that rhythm like that, with those songs. But really the 3/2, it sounds kind of like tap drags. If you're playing tap to get up, same rhythm. But you want this to still be even the whole time. And you know when it's not even, when the triplet hand is the hand that gets messy, right? So yeah, I put that whole thing together in context, right? From the forte hemiola with the accent tap hemiola. And it's just one way to work on both of those styles and approaches of having, like utilizing forearm and utilizing wrist all in one exercise. But let's try it. Let's play up to there and see what happens. We'll start from the top. Don't worry about that last part. You can just, it just goes to forte at the end, but just play everything we did so far. Here we go. 1, 2, lots of forearm. Yeah, and then it goes into just everything's all up triplet, and then left hand triplet, and then eighth note on the right for 16, vice versa. So yeah, the whole thing behind that is being able to combine both of those approaches. And like I said, everything that we're doing is about like that flow and being relaxed and as like efficient, ergonomic as possible. I've been thinking about this a lot. Back when I first started at Blue Knights in 2014, we were just trying to figure out how we wanted to express ourselves as our very first year as a staff there. And a lot of the conversations I work most familiarly with Mike Jackson. And a lot of the conversations we were having were about a lot of like Bruce Lee terms. Bruce Lee talks really philosophical about like martial arts, and he talks about everything being flowy. There's like that famous quote, like "Be like water." You put water in a cup, and it becomes the cup. So a lot of our like approach started morphing into this Bruce Lee philosophy of like play in such a way that you can express it the way you want it to sound. And it was so different than what we had been taught in regular drum corps, where like everything is wrist, kind of like Wayne said in the last session. Like back then, like older drum corps was like everything's one style, very wrist, play the same way. Everyone has to look exactly the same. We kind of started like experimenting with like, what if it wasn't like that? And what if we just express the way we wanted to express ourselves within like playing drums? And Bruce Lee speaks obviously in terms of martial arts, but it's still really philosophical. It's really deep. He has great interviews. You should check him out. But yeah, a lot of our philosophy came from that. And oftentimes, like if you ever go to like a Broken City audition, you hear Mike say, technique is there is no technique. Like he says that a lot, and it's from that Bruce Lee term of like the highest form of technique is no technique. Basically meaning like our technique is going to change and evolve depending on what we're playing. So if I want to play these eighth notes faster, use less arm. Like do what you got to do to get through it. If I want to play them slower, use more arm. Right? And I don't want to define it so much that it takes away from your expression. It might be different from you than it is for me. Like I have super tiny hands. My wrist chops might not be identical to some people. Like some people can play things with a lot of wrist for a long period of time. I might implement a little bit more arm. So that's kind of the framework I'm coming from, and maybe where that 8 on the hand kind of stemmed from, playing with that hemiola and kind of messing around with it. But does anybody have any questions before we go on?
So following up on the Bruce Lee thread, if anybody wants to nerd out to it too, there's a super cool percussion ensemble piece by Andy Akio called Empty Your Mind that is written around Bruce Lee and like can be done with like video of Bruce Lee and stuff like that too. So if anybody wants to like nerd out about that. We've got a couple of questions. One, Miles Wheeler, who's actually here in the chat, asked, for a traditional grip, what is something that can help with working out the wrist to last longer on fast tap exercises?
I don't play traditional, so you got me. But I play mostly match because I'm a tenor drummer. That's why I work with people like Taha, because they teach excellent traditional grip. But I think the thing I see with the tap pyramid stuff, like the low triplet taps, is people either squeeze the grip and their hand gets really tight, and then they're not unable to like get the stick moving efficiently, or they do the opposite and they take all the fingers off, which is the equivalent of like a match grip player doing that too. It's just more obvious with traditional grip. Like you see players get this claw thing going, and you can't really get the taps moving that way because you're creating extra tension. So I've seen a lot of people do this thing and then just add this and like try to create the motion with maybe less fingers on the stick first and see if you could just get your hand to wobble like this, kind of like I was talking about with this. I've seen people do that. I know I've seen Taha do variations with like messing with putting your thumb in a certain place, and like it's the equivalent of a match grip player putting your pointer on top and trying to get this like wrist motion to work on the taps. But yeah, I don't play traditional, so that might not be the best answer. I would say like the biggest thing is like that I see is fingers changing and constantly moving around when people work on tap pyramid. It's like if you could get it and like set it there and keep it there as long as possible and sustain your grip without like changing and like hanging all the fingers off or tightening them, it will help you. You still want the stick to breathe, even though it's not match grip. It's the same concept. So oftentimes I just see like a lot of weird finger things going on, but yeah, hopefully that helps.
Okay, and the second question from Aaron Savage is advice for younger players on developing the intermediate roll speed, that sometime awkward place in between wrist, rebound, slow, and front of the grip, fast.
Oh my gosh, I know what you're talking about. I teach junior high, and in California, junior high is on the competitive level, so we compete just like high school groups. It's crazy. We put on like a full-on winter drumline show and everything, and that's like one of the hardest things is to get that roll quality there, or just to even teach the concept of rolls, because you get to that weird middle ground and they don't know what to do. So the beginning of teaching rolls, everyone's like, 2 wrist turns, get the stick up. It's easy to talk about this part. And I think younger kids really grasp this, like understanding 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But then it's like you said, when you start getting to that weird range that it starts changing. I think some of it is just practicing fast to slow or slow to fast and working your way from that slower tempo and building it up. So you can see and gauge where you need to change or adjust. Like for me, I might be able to use my wrist longer than some people at a faster speed. Actually, no, I'm using arm already. I use arm a lot, so not the best example, but I think it just depends on you, and you have to really work it out. A lot of people do click tracks where they just play really slow and then they build their way up. So you get to that weird middle one, and you can kind of explore and figure out like what you need to do, what you need to adjust. If you're thinking about sound first, like for me, the answer is like listen to what it sounds like. If you're starting to get these kind of sounds, maybe I need to use more wrist and open up, right? Or if maybe I'm just getting too many wrist sounds, right? Maybe I need to add more arm. So it really is dependent on like what it sounds like. So if you start with like your ears first and listen, you can sort of adjust your hands from there. For that middle ground especially, because it starts getting into like a little bit of weird push-pull maybe too. I don't want to go off the wall with that, but a little bit. Like I think there's a weird area where like you feel your hand like kind of open up a little bit more on the back in that middle tempo versus when you're at the slow one, you kind of use a lot of wrist and like get it up. And then when you get real fast, use a little arm, right? So you have to find where your middle ground hits, right? Wherever it is. I've heard this analogy too from working with Mike. Like if you're on a drum set and you're playing like a samba groove, like right? And you're playing it slow, you probably use your foot like 2 times, like both, like your foot will move twice. But then if it started going faster, you might do like 1 and then push down, like dakum, 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 because it's getting faster and faster. So depending on how fast it's going, you have to figure out where your technique is and how to adjust. That's where that Bruce Lee thing comes back in. It's like all about flow, like keep the flow going. Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have at the moment.
Cool. So because we're talking about flow, I'll bring up something that I think can be a little bit misperceived sometimes, maybe with how I'm playing or how you see me playing, but I'm going to define it as lead from the fulcrum instead of leading from the tip of the stick. So if I lead from the tip, right, like I've heard a lot of people say this, tie a string to the tip, right, and then you pull it up and you get this maximum like wrist crank. Now if I did something crazy and like did it over here on the wrist, I'd probably get like a really big molar kind of thing. I'm going to think about it like leading from the fulcrum, like this part of my hand, and that coming up first, and then I'm getting that weight on the way down. So we were doing downstrokes earlier, and if you saw me playing it, it might have looked a little funky when I was doing this thing. Or maybe less traditional than this. Right? I went back and forth between the two. I've been in lines where it was more restricted, less crazy with the lead from the fulcrum. I'm not marching anymore, so I play however I want, but I also teach that way too. I do teach lead from the fulcrum to where it's a little bit more relaxed on the down, more closer proximity to I have a hammer, I have a nail. Everybody's heard that analogy kind of. But really though, if you really think about that analogy, you don't really hammer like this. Like, I mean, if you do, that's okay. But most people just like go for it. And you use a little bit of arm. Like if there was water on my stick and I'm trying to flick it off, or you can hear, if you were next to me, you could hear the air of my stick. And people think of it like a whip, and that's why I want to talk about it today, because it might be different than some of the styles you've done already. It's not really a whip, and it's not really molar, but yeah, there's a little bit of like flick in there, I guess you could say. I call it lead from the fulcrum. Just don't want it to be misinterpreted as like a molar whip. Molar is like its own unique universe. It's like a whole technique. So yeah, it's not really that. So the next thing I want to do is like experiment with that and explore that. It goes back to the whole like being relaxed and playing with charisma, because we're trying to like express ourselves. How do we do that? So something I've been doing in the past is like, if everyone knows the stock like 16th note grid, this one. Right, where we move the partial one accent over, right? I'm also treating this a little bit more advanced, so I'm gonna pretend that you all know 16th note grid. If you don't, you should learn it, because it's very like basic understanding of the 16th note and how to manipulate the accent. So one way to do it, to practice what I'm talking about, this like weird flowy thing that I'm doing, is to play every accent and tap on the same hand until you get to the next accent, so it moves. If you look at the stuff I've sent you, it's under 16 note grid. So we're gonna play the flow pattern, is what it's called. So basically I'm playing accents and taps on the same hand. When I get to the next accent, I go to my left hand. So etc. all the way through, right? So when I'm doing this, I'm really thinking about that whole like flowy lead from the fulcrum thing. I'm exaggerating it right now. If this were a line and I was teaching, I might not let it get too crazy, because sometimes it gets like a little out of control, and that's when people start doing the whole like whip thing, and then you're gonna get weird sounds. Maybe if your tip is like up here, you want to get like your top height where the beat is still up here. You don't want to look like this. I've seen pictures like this. Don't be in a picture like this. Still get up, right? So don't misconstrue the fulcrum weight and heaviness that I'm playing with for whip. It's not whip. So yeah, let's try the fours of this flowy version. We'll try it a little slow. See how it goes. So I'll count you off. We'll just do the fours, so don't go on. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, let's try it again. 1, 2, here we go. So, like I said, I might be exaggerating it a little bit, because I like to play like that. I like to play super flowy. But yeah, it's like, why am I doing that? Why am I leading from the fulcrum? Why am I emphasizing that? Can anybody tell me why? Who can I pick on? Let's see. Anybody tell me why you think I want to lead from the fulcrum? Or you can volunteer. Okay, I'm going to pick on Jake. Go. Why do you think I'm doing this or talking about it? What is it?
Like you were saying, like going back to, you know, you kind of want to do it like hitting a nail with a hammer, because if you're like doing the molar, then you're going to have like different sounds coming out of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, keyword sound, right? Thank you. Thank you for being brave and answering. Yeah, keyword sound. We're talking about like, if that's like my number one and I'm thinking about that the whole time, it's like top of the food chain, top of the pyramid for me. sound, sound, sound. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm trying to get that extra weight on the accent sound. Or I'm just trying to create two sounds. I'm trying to get a forte sound and piano sound at those volumes. So that's why I'm utilizing that weight like that. And it's kind of conducive to what we were just doing. We're doing this tap thing and then the hemiola. Similar. It's like taps and accents, but now we're adding this whole fulcrum relaxed vibe to it. But yes, it's all for sound and weight. Because drumming's really primal. Like if you think about it, drumming's primal. It probably started without sticks. I don't know this, don't quote me, but it probably started with hands. And if you're playing like hand drumming, I don't personally do that, but to me, it seems a little bit more legato and loose and relaxed to utilize those muscles that naturally work for us, or mechanisms that naturally happen, like forearm and leg. So, something to think about when you're doing this flow one.
Yeah, on that note with the primal stuff, I've actually started in some of our percussion methods classes, started talking to them about actually starting on like hand drums, on like congas and stuff like that, to get the motion down before they even put the sticks in their students' hands.
Yeah, that's like something I usually do with junior high kids, is start with just literally just like hands for a second and get that motion to be relaxed, because sometimes we get really scientific about it and we want to be like perfect and really technical about it, but there's such a like primal relaxed element to drumming, and that's why I use the hammer thing, or many people use the rebound. They talk about bouncing a ball, or like more natural things that you normally do in just life. So trying to apply that to this thing, the whole lead from the fulcrum. You don't, if you're more comfortable playing like lead from the tip, that's also fine. I'm just sharing one side of the coin, like a different side of it, where you can like allow a little bit more breath under the stick to get that weight on the accent. So let's try all of flow. So basically you do the twos and the ones of 16-note grid, like everyone know the ones, this part. Right, and it repeats 4 times. You change hands on the accent. Etc. all the way through. So let's try the whole thing. Try to get that natural energy. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. You can excuse my left-hand quality. I need to drum more. But either way, when you're doing it, like I said, we're getting the flow. But also, like, something to note is prep. Like, that's kind of where that lead from the fulcrum comes in. Like, just how we're prepping and how the stick is on its way upward. The cool thing about doing it with the grid is the prep moves, right? It's moving as a 16th partial move. So if I'm prepping, like, on the and maybe, 1, E, and 2, right? And I'm moving on the end to get my stick up. If the accent's on the E, now you got to move the prep over a little bit. If it's on the end, you got to move it over. So the cool thing is it kind of forces you to like learn how to prep and be relaxed. This is kind of where that whole anybody remember this exercise, triplets? Maybe not. It's called BCAT. It's an old Blue Knights exercise that we played in 2014, but kind of where this backbeat hand came from. We were thinking like, if you're thinking about expression, right? Like I want to express myself. I want to make this sound a certain way. I want this backbeat. When you think backbeat, you think like drum set style. So we didn't want it to be played like this, where the prep is really late and delayed. We wanted the prep to be kind of big, really relaxed, big fulcrum lead, I should say, right? So that's kind of where this came from. Or if you see now, more currently, we play this thing. That thing, right? I'm playing really wide flams, but the prep, that whole thing, that space kind of came from that vibe too. Like, how do we get more closer to like a drum set player? So I used the grid, like 16-note grid, to kind of work on that and relax the flow a little. So the next one, we'll just go through this one a little quicker. because we're talking about stroke types. So we're doing down and tap, and we did a bunch of full strokes when we started. The next one is inverts. So it's the same exact patterns, but you're doing inverted sticking. So that way you can work on that upstroke. We're talking about getting that quick accent to get all the way back up. So if you play the same grid, you just start the tap on the opposite hand. So right, left, 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 right? And then put the accent on that same hand after the tap. And then go through the whole thing like that. You're working on that fast upstroke. So now we've basically implemented all the stroke types pretty much. Let's try the fours of the invert, mess around with it, see how it feels, and then we can talk about it. Let's try it. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then you just do at the end. Yeah. So I gapped it, but a lot of people, that's what I was going to say is a common problem. You gap it because you get a little bit tense, like to the accent. Like you have to work on getting that accent to move, that tap to move quick to get back down to the accent. So that's a weird stroke. A lot of people don't talk about it. Some people don't even really like define it. I don't go too crazy on it because you can like get too scientific and mess it up. But it is helpful, like if you're trying to work on like inverted flams or something, like you need to know how to do this, that fast version of an accent. So if you go all the way through the whole thing, you can, obviously get it a little bit faster and keep working on it. I won't do that. I just threw it out there for you guys. And there's all kinds of fun things you can do with this. Like I put singles on it, like and went all the way through it like that. You do it with the invert, et cetera, right? You could just mess with it however you want. That's one way. I know a lot of people grid where you just keep it alternating and you add flams and you add diddles and buzzes and stuff. I've been more messing around with it where it's like technique based and stroke based. I know Taha did a version. We used to do this at Blue Nights, same thing, but with triplet grid. And then we used to do it with like molar. So we'd go and work on it like that, just to work on one hand of molar. So it's more like, it's less about like, I guess, gridding for the sake of timing and worrying about like, I'm gonna put the diddle on the end count or the downbeat or the flam on the downbeat. It's more about like technique and using grid as a form to work on technique and just implementing all the strokes. So that's one thing, little easy thing that a lot of people already know how to do. Everyone knows grid. You just keep messing with it and working on different techniques, sound stuff. But yeah, any questions before I go on?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's cool about this is, this approach that's kind of developed that is a lot rooted in like drum set technique and how natural and fluid that has to be and everything, that what I found also crosses more over to all of the other percussion instruments also, because you want to have that loose, relaxed flow and everything. And playing that way, like they learn more like one technique instead of like they've got my marching technique, then my drum set technique, and then my concert snare drum technique, and there's like more balance and crossover between all the styles.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if, like, here's the funny part. I don't play drum set, and I don't play like many other percussion instruments. I'm mostly rudimental drumming, but I played tenors, and I guess like what I found as a performer, which was a long time ago, was like the relationship between tenors and drum set. Like if you're moving from one drum, like you're on drum 3 and you want to move to drum 4, how do you move there and create relaxed, warm sounds without like creating any extra tension that you don't need? Especially because like we're wearing a harness and the like go-to image is like a very like straight, perfectly looking performer, right? Where I'm kind of messing with the idea of being a little bit looser, moving your body a little bit more, being a little bit more free and relaxed with it. So I think some of it stemmed from like just playing tenors where like you have to move over. And I would always think about like drum set players moving from like one tom or cymbal to the other one, and I rarely saw them do it so technical as like a rudimental percussionist. and it's like really inspiring for my style and technique to explore that. Like try to play tenors like that actually helped just give more flow and breathe a little bit more, make it more relaxed. But a lot of that was like the premise was behind like staying expressive. Like you want something to sound like really like a certain way. I want to play like the tiniest piano I've ever played in my life. Like you might have to adjust and play a little bit different. You can't play maybe with the traditional rudimental drumming technique that you thought you could, or you want to play, something like I'm talking about on tenors where like you have to reach far. Maybe experiment with that too. So that's kind of where it stemmed from too. Very similar to what Dr. Wiggins is saying with like drum set playing. Even though I don't play drum set, I've just referenced it a lot, and I imagine it being very similar to like tenor drumming. Even though our version of tenor drumming is not necessarily that, but I'm trying to like experiment with it, expose it a little bit more. Yeah.
I'd imagine too that a lot of that comes from like teaching Mike's books too, right? Because of how insanely expressive they are, and probably the motion and stuff is used to fill in space that he leaves in there also. So I'd imagine that all ties into it as well.
Oh yeah, totally. Like Mike's writing like lends itself to that style of playing, which is how we kind of ended up working together. Because my background of teaching and being educated, when I went to high school, I was taught by Tony Nunez, and he kind of worked with Mike Jackson at that time too, and they had similar styles. And actually went to high school. The center snare in my high school, it was this girl named Kat, and she marched Vanguard in 5, 6, 7, 8. She was a center snare in 7 and 8, and she marched 2007 and 6 when Mike was there. So I think her influence, Tony's influence, kind of just translated into how I played. And then when I ended up working with Mike, it worked out really well because he writes that way, and there's so much nuance to what he writes and so much expression that you have to be okay with allowing your hands to adjust depending on what it is that he's playing. And I'm not saying my hands are constantly adjusting and I don't have any real control. I still have control. I'm just like, depending on what I'm playing, I'm allowing for that freedom, I guess, a little bit more. And I see it now. It could be a West Coast thing. That's what everybody says. Like, oh, it's a West Coast thing. I don't think so per se. I just think, every group is trying to explore and find their own version of expression and how they do it. And for me, particularly with Mike's writing, kind of has to be that way. And it works. It just allows itself to naturally like blend together. But yeah. How much time do I have? Because I was going to do a couple things, but.
You've still got time. We're good.
Okay. I'll do 2 more things. I threw a bunch of things at you guys like in the PDF, so you can learn some of those on your own. Those are just some versions of stuff that I wrote and played at some of my schools. But one that I'm going to go over, because I know everybody went over like a double beat, and everybody here probably knows a version of double beat. And I was thinking too, like very similar to the 8s thing, like how I could do a version of double beat, but focus a little bit, yes, on the double stroke, but also on like syncopation and timing of it. So I started messing around with different numbers, because all double beat is 2 16th notes in a row with the space, and then 2 16th notes, space, etc. Right? So what if you put however many 16th notes, space, with however many after that? So that exercise free solo that you have in there's basically I just started messing around with numbers. So the first right hand, it's 4 16th notes, space, 4 16th notes, and then 3 3 2 2 1 1. So it's basically playing groupings of 16ths and still keeping that rest in there like you do in a regular normal double beat, so you can really catch that rebound stroke. But just messing around with groove, and like, what if there were no bar lines? Like, who cares? Just play groove, play in time, play funk. We can play any version of 16th notes. We still gotta play in time. We still gotta play with rebound strokes. Still gotta be like double beat status. But it's just a way of working on it that's a little bit different. So I'll play that first bar for you just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So it's 2 4s, 2 3s, 2 2s, 2 1s. So you could, I wouldn't count it like this, but you could. 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 1 2 1 2 1 1. Right? That's the literal explanation, but I'm just feeling it. And then ending on my left hand, do the same thing off your left hand. So let's try that much together. So right hand, left hand. Let's try that much. 1. Let's try it again. 2. 1, 2. Yeah, so I think I heard Glenn talk about this when he was doing his version of double beat, which I really liked. It was super cool. Side note, I took private lessons from Glenn when I was like 17, 18. He taught me a lot about drums, so shout out to Glenn. But anyhow, I think I heard him talk about when you're playing a version of double beat, you're not trying to get that accent on the first note. Like. So with this one, when you play the 4s, that's a big tendency. I feel like with the 2s, everyone kind of knows already. Both notes are bouncing up. But when you play the 4s, a lot of people do this. So try not to. Try to get all the notes to kind of match in sound. I think the first one might have a little bit more weight. Might be more natural to do that, but you're trying to not let it be a deep crescendo. You still want rebound on all the strokes. So anyhow, it goes from that 2 times of each number, like 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1, to 1 time of each number. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, and then go back up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, left hand. So. Right? Let's try just that right hand. So it's 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the reason I kind of went on this weird turn of events with double beat is because we're so used to that like stock one. I just wanted to do something where you can like wake up the brain, but also just be able to find groove and funk. It doesn't matter how many groupings of 16th notes we play. We could do 5 and then a rest, and then 6 and then a rest, whatever it is. You still gotta have the groove, and you should be able to mark time and know where the tempo is no matter how we mix it up. So let's try that. 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll do it off the left hand too. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. It's a little weird. 2, try again. 1, 2. Sorry, I played the beginning. 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3. So the beginning, it's 2 of each number, and it doesn't go back up, and then it goes into 1 of each number and goes back up. So that's one way to work on it. Let's try putting the whole thing together. And like I said, you're still trying to get that rebounded stroke, and this is going to translate into rolls. All stuff that like has already kind of been talked about. This is just a different version with syncopation. Let's try it. From the beginning, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then it does the same. It does a 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? I wouldn't count it that way, but you can. I also don't even count it as true 16ths. Like 1, 8, 2. I don't even know how to where all the partials, like how to count them at the same time as I'm playing, but it might be helpful. I mean, I could do it if I start reading it, but I really just feel it. So it's more about like feel, like if you're feeling these groupings together. And actually, side notes, the title came from, has anyone seen that documentary called Free Solo? Anybody? No one? It's like it's on a lot of platforms. You should watch it. It's about this this guy who basically climbs up El Capitan, and he uses no ropes for anything. He just like rock climbs up there with no ropes. It's insane. But just watching it and the idea and the technique behind his like practicing and training was so eye-opening, and how he uses like no ropes, and he just uses muscle memory to like literally figure out where he's going. And so I was thinking like, what if there's no bar lines? What if there's no like time signature, and it's just numbers and groupings, and we just feel it because we have the muscle memory. Like everyone knows how to play double beat, so you have the muscle memory of doing that and how to play rebound strokes. And then we just mix it up, and time signature is irrelevant, but groove and funk is relevant. So granted, I had to write it on paper, so yes, there's time signatures, but they're all weird if you look at it, because I wanted to make it very easy to read. So some are like in weird time signatures, but that's because I wanted to have a group learn it, but I wouldn't necessarily think about it that way. I would think about it more as like groove and funk and how we're messing with these groupings and still keeping time no matter what. So yeah, it keeps going. It goes into like a 2-height version. I'll just play it all the way to the 2-height. The 2-height goes into like a version of Taha's exercise, DK, that we played at BK. But I'm just going to stop there and play all the double beat version. So it goes from like a 4-3-2-1, 3-2-1, and then a 2-1. So I'll play all of it. You can try to follow along. Really the best way is to just think in those groupings. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, sorry about my fast eighth notes. It goes into the 2-height after that, but all I did was just keep removing numbers. So that's like also another writing tactic if there's any composers out there. Kind of gave you a little bit of background on like my inspiration of like writing it and how it came to my head. A lot of it was based on groove and funk and syncopation, and all I did was mess with numbers. So depending on how you want to recreate it, you could do whatever you want. But yeah, I just really moved numbers around. And I also didn't want to do like the normal double beat that everybody kind of already knows. Just trying to experiment with something else. But yeah, the 2-height part goes into that DK thing. And then after that, it goes into just a regular flam accent. And I'm not going to play it, but I'll just talk about it. I think 2-height accent to tap like DK. I don't know if Taha did that with you guys, but it's so hand in hand with flams. So a lot of people put those in the same exercise. Like I mentioned BCAT earlier. We used to do this one at BK. And then at the end, we would do a little flam part. That whole thing. Because they kind of work together. Like when you do this whole one hand of the flam, and you put them together. It's kind of that thing. So that's another like writing, teaching thing when you're coming up with exercises. A lot of people put a 2-height isolated hand, and then put a tag with flam accents and flam taps to kind of merge the two together. That's the premise of that free solo exercise. I'm not going to play it all, but one thing to look at or take a look at when you're working on like the isolation of each hand as it relates to flam accents. And flam accents are another one like in an audition setting where I could really tell if the primal thing was hit or miss, right? Sometimes people would be really wristy, right, with flam accents, so you get this kind of sound. Or you get this really high tap. And then sometimes people would do, like I'm talking about, a little bit more weight on the fulcrum. I'm getting a little bit bigger sound, a little bit more weight. So if I took the tap out, getting a little bit of versus. So it's a little bit different, right? It might look a little different, but that's the framework that I'm coming from. Something to think about when you're trying to get that weight. And when you're trying to get consistent flams, I actually play really open flams, probably more like a drum set player. But I have heard people like try to clean flams in a line setting and play them really tight because they think it's better from a cleaning perspective. My whole thing is like, if you're gonna play a flam, play a flam. Like, you should hear that grace on it. So even if you're doing flam accents, I'm about it. If they're open, be open. And if they're too open, we could fix it in a line setting. Like if I'm teaching a 9-person snare line and I hear somebody too open, it's easier to tighten them up than it is to be so tight and try to open them up. So it's one way to look at it. You could try practicing them really open. I think the one hand works in isolation, but then when you add them together, we often forget like to listen to the flam sound. There's some great stick control patterns in the book where like he'll just take one pattern and do it over and over like this. and you really can work on, you can see my prep, you can see the fulcrum thing. I'm like, am I lifting for the grace and going like this? I heard a great analogy, like if the flam is a race, right, and you're on the starting line, your grace note should not be like going with it at the same time, right? Like sometimes we want to like lift everything from the same height, right? If I'm on a race, it's like one person's cheating. Like, don't cheat, just like wait, right? Wait for it to happen, ready, set, go, and we lift from the same, like piano hand, forte hand. Not ready, set, go, and like one hand's up here. You miss the flam, right? So keep them here at this forte piano, so you can actually get those flam sounds. I saw Glenn did like a little exercise, 8-note flams. That's a good one to work on that. But there's tons of stuff. That's just a thoughts on flams. Talking about it.
Well, I think again with the flam thing, kind of going back to the technique being more related to what you could do on like concert stuff, I think it's the same thing with the flams. You would never ever in any situation play a flam that tight in concert playing. And so I find that it gets confusing for students a lot of times because they've been taught to play like really super tight flams, and then they go to try to play like a concert snare piece or something, and suddenly they're not even playing flams.
Yeah. We play this exercise called Niner at, we used to play it at BK, we also played it at Broken City. It starts with really low chord note triplet. I don't know if anybody knows that one, but it's a molar exercise. But we related those flams in there because they kind of feel like a little bit of molar, because it is more similar to concert percussion. Like if I was playing that on a snare drum, a concert snare drum, versus this, right? So we want that weight, we want that sound when we're playing something like Niner. But yeah, that's on that whole front. And the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about, because I watched all the videos, like I said, and there's something I write all the time, and I was like, someone's going to talk about it, and no one talks about buzzes yet, and I love buzzes. Or maybe someone did and I missed it. So either way, I think rolls and buzzes kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, there was no talk about buzzes, so you're on that island by yourself now. So go for it.
Yeah, like everyone talked about roll quality already, so I'm not going to talk about like I'm not going to show you some triple rolls exercise. I threw one in there in the PDF Dropbox thing, so if you guys want to let it, go for it. But I'm not going to like go bar by bar or anything. I just wanted to articulate a conversation about buzz rolls and how important they are. I write buzz rolls all the time. It's like a huge part of my composition vocabulary. You can ask my pig guy, Weston Amaro. He knows. He makes fun of me all the time. Because I write buzzes all the time to like express something. Like if I want a crescendo to come out of nowhere and the drum line's facing backfield and I want to turn around and get like a zoom from like out of nowhere, you can write a buzz roll and it sounds cool like that. It has that texture. And you can write it really soft at piano to create that nuance. There's just so many things you can do with the buzz roll. So, everyone talked about rolls and did a lot of roll exercises. You can do the same, but with the buzz, like just a regular short, long that we used to do. This is Mike Jackson's short, long versions. I threw up in there too to check out. But the very first pattern, we always just do buzzes. We do piano, check 2 counts, 2 counts of buzzes. So 4 counts. And then we repeat it, right? So that's the first pattern we always start with. And the reason I'm bringing up buzz is obviously for texture, like I said, and vocabulary, but it's such a good, helpful way to work on rolls too. It helps you kind of get that forearm thing and the fulcrum idea happening. So that's one way to talk about like we're using pressure, but we're not using so much pressure that it's choked off. And you could go to the extreme, like you could have a really loose buzz, like so loose that you're getting so many bounces, or you could get it really short. I'm trying to find like the happy medium where it's like right in the middle, so it's not too short. I don't want to play. It's probably too short. We want it to connect a little bit. Right? That wasn't a good one. But either way, so I'm using a little bit of pressure, but it's still relaxed. But I am using a little bit of forearm too, and it's a good transition into rolls. So that's the reason I bring it up. Like I know there was a lot of triple roll exercises brought up, and everyone's working on those, and that's cool. You should try working on the same exercise and putting a buzz instead of the diddle. Like if you're struggling with the diddle and the hand speed, it's one way to work on hand speed. Like if I'm teaching a young player and they're like really struggling with triplet rolls, which usually a junior high kid is, if I'm teaching a junior high kid, I always start with the buzz. Like just get the speed of triplet, like move your hands in that way. And then it's like you can open up from there. So you're playing a buzz, now open up a little bit and get that bounce. This is where we're talking about that fast diddle, where it's like, it's different than this. So they're all in the same category, but they're on a different spectrum. Like this, it's not the same as this. They're a little different, and this is probably closer to a buzz. You just want to open it up a little bit more. Obviously, you don't want to be as tight as a buzz. That will put you on a tight diddle. You still want, if I'm playing a triple roll, like 2 24th notes, you don't want them to be that tight, but buzz rolls help you get there. And also, they help you work on pressure. And if we're talking about chops, it's also another way to chop out. Like I've done versions of like grid with buzzes, like where you're like really pumping your arms and just trying to get those like arm motion to work and that pressure in your hand. But it's one way to warm up. A lot of people do that. We actually started our lot at BK like that. We would start with just 3 counts of buzz on each hand, because we found that the kids actually really enjoyed like the feeling of the buzz to warm up their hand, like their fingers and their forearms. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it is something you can do to like warm up or work on, but also to help you with the rolls. Like I like the exercise Glenn was doing with where the diddle moves. That one, you could put buzzes on it. Right? And go through the whole thing. And it just helps you get that motion. And then from there, you can sort of open up and start working on the diddle. So that was the whole side to buzzes that I wanted to like bring up and just bring our attention to, because it is one way to like work on chops and forearm and triplet rolls, and mainly hand speed too. That's also helpful. But most importantly, like expression and music and nuance. Like if you're a writer, like buzzes are great. And they can like, well, it depends on how they're played. I shouldn't say that. Depends on how they're played. So it's one of those hard things that's so neglected. Like we don't talk about it enough. We like teach kids and everyone just goes, like no one actually listens to the quality of the buzz roll. So when you start an exercise like this, and you're trying to get like 9 people to play exactly the same, you can hear everything. Like you can hear the touch difference. You can hear someone's tight. You can hear someone has bad sticks. You can hear everything on that buzz roll. So it's also another good indicator of like listening skills and developing that, especially if you're playing it on a drum. Like I'm playing it on a pad, so you might not hear everything, or you might, and you're like, I need to work on my buzzes too. But either way, if you're playing it on a drum, especially a snare drum, it's so exposed. Like the level of exposure is crazy. But something we experimented with a lot. Like we would play really low buzz rolls and like try to be like as expressive as possible with the crescendo coming out of nowhere. Kind of like when you're at an amusement park and you walk by a roller coaster and like it passes by you and it has it like and it just disappears, like that sound, like creating that sound where it's like coming from nowhere, you don't expect it, and then it ends right in front of you and it's gone already. So kind of experimenting with that kind of expression with the buzz roll, and then that led into like working on triple rolls really low. We would play like really, really low, tiny piano rolls. Like we ended the show at Blue Nights this last summer with the lowest piano roll on that snare drum, and like so like every time we thought they had it and it was clean, Mike would come and be like, play it lower, and I'd be like, no, because it was just it was so hard to clean at piano. So we started though like working on the buzz and the speed and just like getting that to be the motion for them and being able to open up from there. Like try that pressure thing and then relax it, keep relaxing it. So then you know for sure your diddles aren't maximum pressure, because if you're tight on diddles, then it's going to be hard, to get through them all. So that's one idea to look at. I told myself after watching them, I'm going to talk about buzzes just to make sure that that content gets out there too. But,
well, I think, one of my go-tos for when I have to clean rolls is buzzes. You know, because if we're having problems with rolls, a lot of times we'll go to, let's do these as buzzes and see what happens, because that a lot of times reveals like pressure issues in the hands and stuff like that too. But yeah, I really got on that because I remember when I was marching, my age out year, Ralph and Glenn actually came into rehearsal one day. It was like, you all's buzz rolls are terrible. and we got to fix that. And so we had an entire day where basically the entire rehearsal block was working on everybody in the line's buzz rolls. So
they're really hard and really deceiving, and I think a lot of people kind of bypass them because maybe the idea of them seems easy to learn. It's just like the real true like talent of getting them is difficult. It's a challenge, and when you're in a drum corps, like you really are exposed because everyone's at such a high level, so you can hear all the differences. If you make each person play a buzz roll down the line, you can tell the difference. It's like really apparent. But that short long exercise, I have another version of triple rolls too. I think I may have thrown it in there, but Mike Jackson's short long exercise, it's so thorough and well thought out, and I don't want to recreate it because I think it has everything I kind of need. So my high school that I work with him at Vista Marietta, we play that. And the other triple rolls exercise I threw in there, my other high school, Roland, plays that. But the one that Mike wrote, it has all those variations, and it starts with the buzz roll. And it's just like, there are so many times where we start with that, and it's like, cut, nope, try again. Gotta get a good buzz, first of all, before we even get to like fancy tap fives and crescendo rolls and decrescendo rolls. But you'll notice if you look at that PDF that it goes through all those different variations of buzz, roll, tap roll, release roll, tap fives, and crescendo rolls. So I think that exercise is really great because it works on all those variations, but it does start with the buzz to kind of get you into that mode. Something to work on and like think about, and even if you want to chop out. I've seen back in the day when Vanguard used to play like Schlitz and Giggles, they used to play with all buzzes, and that's like a good like way to chop out and work on it. I used to do that too, but you could play like grid or whatever, like any exercise like that with accents, and just play buzzes and see how it works that forearm. You can feel it, like almost like you're doing a click track where you're going slow to fast and you feel that burn. Buzzes are kind of like that too. Just be careful that you're not going on the extreme of where you hurt yourself, obviously. If it's painful, don't go that long, but I've seen a lot of people do that, like play an exercise and just play all with buzzes just to work on a chop, get that forearm chop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we play. You remember we play the Not a Noct, which is the Walmart version of Niganoct, and it's basically 3 camps with buzzes at the beginning and stuff too. So we've actually got a question from Jake Presnall. While you're on the subject of diddles, can you let us in on your stance on East Coast diddles versus West Coast diddles?
I don't know what that is. What is an East Coast diddle? I'm on the West Coast, so I don't know. What's an East Coast diddle?
I'm guessing that he's thinking of it that a lot of times those diddles tend to be a little bit more tighter, maybe. A little bit tighter interp or something.
I don't know if it's about like coast to coast, but more along what I'm thinking is like the math of it. So I said 24th note earlier. A lot of times we're saying like we speak in numbers of the math of the literal note versus saying like a triplet diddle. I'm saying 24th because if you're playing a triplet roll, right, we're playing 4 triplets in a bar, that's 12 partials, right, across, and I diddle them all. That's 24 notes, literal notes played in there. So they are 24th notes. So no matter what, East Coast, West Coast, tight, open, like you have to play accurate 24th notes. You're trying to play the correct rhythm. So we say 16th notes and 8th note rolls and 16th note rolls, but then when we start getting to the more complex math, we don't normally say it that way, but we do. Like at Rock City, Blue Knights, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a West Coast thing. I just think from my perspective, I'm trying to think about it as the math. Like if we're talking about 9-lits, talking about 18th notes, like perfect 18th notes, because that's what they are. Just the same way you say 16th notes. So that's how I have the framework of maybe it's more open than closed, I guess, but it's more like I'm just trying to shoot for that 24th note sound, that even exact sound from right to left. But I don't know if that.
Yeah, well, the roll is a rhythm,
Exactly. Yeah,
so it has to be rhythmically accurate.
Yeah, we're thinking more like, rhythms and integrity of rhythms versus like just rolling and just moving my hands. The reason I use the buzz as hand speed because you're not really thinking about the 24th note. You're thinking more about the 12th and trying to get that like perfect triplet and the hand speed there. But when you open up, like you really have to open up to get the 24th, otherwise you're going to be too tight. But yeah, it's always just thinking about the math of it and the rhythmic accuracy of it. And we would do like fun experiments with short, short, long, where everybody would like play a different pattern, and we try to see if the diddle quality would line up. So like one person's playing, you know, regular, and then another person's playing pattern 3, or et cetera, et cetera. Every person in the snare line is playing a different pattern, but do they line up? Are we all playing the same type of diddle, despite whatever pattern you're on? So that was like a fun thing, like an A-B way to work on it. But it was the idea of the rhythm first, not necessarily like, oh, just triplet diddles. Like it's more like 24ths. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
All right, so as we're wrapping up, it's kind of, this was not planned, but it's kind of become a thing that I ask as we get to the end. So first of all, a tip or two that you could give directed towards the instructors that are out there. Things to look for, things to think about that work for you.
Wow. I would say just be authentic, and I know there's so many ways and versions of things that have already been done, and it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's easy to, you know, kind of just go with what you know, but try to explore different things. I think that's what's helped me so much, is like kind of like Dr. Wiggins was saying about drum set playing and all these different type of playing and different percussion universes that sometimes we don't always think about in the rudimental world. Just try to explore and then see how it helps you and your drum line, because sometimes we put ourselves in a box and it traps us. It's hard to get out, and you limit the things you can write, or maybe the things you could play. Maybe you want to write like fast singles, but you don't want to play with molar because rudimental drummers don't play with molar. Then you just cut out like a certain vocabulary for your kids, or that you wanted to hear. So if I want to hear fast 16ths and I want them to sound like with that molar sound, then we're going to play with molar, even if that's not traditional to rudimental drumming. So for me, it's like explore and think outside the box. And it might not be what you've seen before. It might be totally different. It might not work. It might totally suck, but it's worth trying and experimenting and taking away what you like from it. So yeah, be authentic.
And then any tips or words of advice to the students that are out there listening to this?
Oh man, you guys are living in such a unique space. It's so different than anything like we grew up in. It's different for me now too. I've actually never really taught virtually this much as I'm doing right now. So you're just living in such a weird time. I guess it's like, just do your part, like do whatever you can to give back, to continue to stay within the music activity too, because music is so, I think Glenn mentioned that too, it's so healing. Like there's such another element to it than the competitive side. And we're all living in this like weird universe right now where the competitive side is totally irrelevant. Like none of that matters right now. Like, but it does matter that we continue the arts and we continue to push forward this like healing element that music has, that we still continue to give back to it. And this opportunity is super cool, just seeing all these different instructors and seeing different people give information, and everyone's trying to do their part to work together to still make the platform of the arts like continue forward. So do your part, whatever that is. And same as I said for the instructors, like be authentic, experiment. If you like one style, go with it. If you don't, go with something else, try something else. Just go like study different things. You have like the world of teaching at your hands right now with the technology thing right now. I've seen so many videos and clinics and different styles and approaches. Like if you want to try something different, you know, experiment, explore, because there's so much out there. And just do your part, keep giving back, because more than ever, I think the world needs stuff like this and music and the arts as a platform. And I really think no one's gonna fight for it and keep it going except us. Like there is no administrative ruling or school board or anybody that's gonna care about it as much as we do. So every teacher, student, whatever in the art platform should keep it going, do your part.
Awesome. Any last questions from anybody that's actually in here in the chat right now?
Shy.
Anyone?
Oh, girl questions? I always get like one girl question.
All right, well, seeing as how there's not, thank you so much, Veronica, for taking the time to do this. It was awesome and fun and very informative. To everybody that's out there watching, this will be up on YouTube in case you didn't get to watch all of it, or if you want to share it with your students and stuff like that. Next week, we have Jeff Queen will be in the house. And there's a different time. So to make his schedule with Yamaha work and everything, we're actually going to be at 7:30 Central Time next Monday. And then we wrap it up the week after that with Veronica's buddy, Roger Carter. So we're hitting the West Coast pretty hard here at the end of this series. So, but again, thank you, Veronica. Thank you to everybody that tuned into this, and everybody be cool to each other and be safe, especially those of you that are still getting to actually start band camps and stuff like that right now. So, all right, peace out to everyone.